We got a developer blog post, and best of all, it's by Aaron Keller himself, and it covers every single role in Overwatch as well as matchmaking. Let's get straight into this. Alright, so a few weeks ago, we published the first in this series of updates on the game. It's crazy how much has happened since then. We launched Season 3, announced a collab with One Punch Man, and I'm now dating Genji. I feel so lucky. I wanted to dive into two topics today, Season 3 balance and the matchmaking. We feel the start of Season 3 is in a much better state of balance than the start of Season 2. We hear from players that balance is the best it's been since the launch of Overwatch 2, while the game feels fresh based on all the changes we've made. It's been great watching that discussion, and to foster it, I'd like to give a bit more details and a bit less commentary. So I just want to stop right there. I need to say I agree. I genuinely do believe that Overwatch 2 is in the best it's been in a while. Some are even arguing it's the best Overwatch has ever been before. Moving from there though, Aaron Keller continues to say, let's look at the support role first. On the positive side, most supports are viable in nearly every skill tier. Brigitte has really popped this season and has the highest win rate for nearly all skill tiers except for top 500, where Zenyatta takes the lead, with both averaging out at nearly 55% win rate. On the other end of the spectrum are Kiriko and Moira at around 45%. This goes to show that heroes with the highest win rates aren't always the heroes that are the most played. When we look at who is actually being played, the top supports are actually Ana, Kiriko, and Mercy for nearly all skill tiers until Silver and Bronze, where Moira becomes picked quite a bit. This is obvious, lower ranks have harder time aiming. Moira can take more free duels and get out a free jail card, but anyways. It's counterintuitive that Kiriko has such a high pick rate at the highest levels of play, but such a low win rate, and Brigitte has such a high win rate but a mediocre play rate. While it would be fun to pick on this group, we tend to think that highly skilled players are continuing to pick certain heroes for good reasons, and we're getting additional metrics for maps, team comps, and team fights to try and understand this. If it's fruitful, expect to hear more about it. So obviously this is interesting. He's kind of saying, why aren't high ranks playing Brigitte more while her win rate remains high? I'm not entirely sure if this is just because Kiriko was popular for so long that a lot of people are picking her, giving the system more data to know what is a better and worse win rate. The lower someone's picked, the less true data you have is what I call it, like true data. With that being said, it's also very possible that Brigitte is just very strong and people haven't realized quite yet. I guess only time will tell. Naturally, the next role we're going to be talking about, or Aaron Keller talks about, is tanks. Tanks are in a great spot right now. It's almost hard to pick a bad tank. At the top end, Reinhardt has the highest win rate of tanks for most tiers, reaching about 58% in Bronze through Platinum. At Masters and above, Sigma edges him out and sits at 55% in top 500. Hog is struggling a bit, even though there are still situations where he can be successful. Winston and Zarya can perform well at certain ranks, and the rest of the roster is solid across all skill tiers. Wrecking Ball is probably the biggest tank topic in the community right now, and takes varying. Some think he's overpowered, others feel he is in a good spot, and still others think both, and flip-flop back and forth. His win rate is among the top 3 to 4 tanks at most tiers, and bounces between 51 and 55%. His pick rate is lower in the metal ranks, increasing as players' skill rises. By the top 500, he is far and away the most picked tank. We think that this has enabled other heroes to stand out in the current meta along with Wrecking Ball. But we are keeping an eye on him and want to make sure that the players don't get fatigued by seeing too much of the little guy. So my take on this is it kind of makes perfect sense. They buff Wrecking Ball. Wrecking Ball's scale will go with skill. He is a very nuanced character. I don't care what anyone says. You need a ton of skill to play him effectively. So that's basically why his annoyance, I guess, rises across the skill ranks. The higher the rank, the more annoying he can be. The second major point is that Aaron Keller is saying that tanks in general are quite balanced, and I would tend to agree. That much is very true. I do think, of course, Hog did get slaughtered too much, and I'm glad to see that he's saying Hog is struggling struggling, because it does feel like he is struggling, even if people say, no, he's perfectly balanced. I do think he's on the weaker side, and when I did the video with aggregated data, which takes every big content creator's tier list, Hog ends up being the worst hero in Overwatch by data, which is kind of funny. But moving from there has been some big swings in the damage role. There are two stories here. From a numbers perspective, DPS feels fairly balanced across the board. The Season 3 has been called the Season of Hitscan by many of you, or possibly the Season of Cassidy. Changes to Sojourn as well as buffs to a few other characters have opened a new set of heroes for people to play. Cassidy, Pharah, Widowmaker, and Tracer have all risen in playtime. In fact, Cassidy's the most picked hero by a huge margin at all ranks except for top 500, where he's tied with Tracer, and he continues to move up. Around 30% of the matches have a Cassidy on both sides. Besides Symmetra, it's harder to talk about the most powerful heroes for DPS at the middle to higher ranks. The band that most damage heroes fall within is between 47 and 53% win rate. Pharah, Widowmaker, Tracer, and Symmetra hover around the top, but things shift around almost daily. At lower ranks, the top heroes by win rate are Symmetra and Torbjorn. It's always Symmetra and Torbjorn. In fact, Symmetra typically has the highest win rate in the game for all roles at all ranks except for Masters and above. It's kind of funny because it's hard to deal with her util at lower ranks. Sombra, at the low end of power, it did have a significant lift this season and has a win rate of around 46% at Diamond and above. With the current state of the game, we're not looking at doing balance changes until our mid-season patch, which honestly is completely fair. It's in a pretty good spot, and I don't think there's any emergency patch needed. We did make some big changes to the matchmaker this season. The primary goal was to optimize the pairing of players to minimize the MMR difference within a specific role. For example, when making matches, we put more emphasis on the DPS player on each team being closer in skill level than we do for the DPS players on one team being evenly matched with the tank players on the other. This has worked, and matches have a much tighter skill delta between the players of the same role. There has been some other positive effects to these changes in ranked. Queue times have dropped, and for high skill matches, they've dropped significantly. Average match quality has also risen. Also, matches with longer queue times are typically of a higher quality now than they were previously. Previously, the longer a player waited, the looser our restrictions on the skill ceilings would become. This is still true, but that range should be more condensed. Oh, that's kind of interesting. So the longer you're waiting, they don't want you to quit Overwatch, so they start lowering the restrictions just to get you into a game. Oh, I did not know that. However, there have been some downsides to these changes, some of them unforeseen. Queue times have risen in unranked a bit, and for groups with large skill differentials, they've risen quite a lot. We've made changes here, and queue times for unranked are already moving lower. We've also heard from players that they are experiencing large win-loss streaks in the game. To be clear, we don't try to cause or prevent streaks based on ideal win rate for players. We're studying these reports and we'll share more information when we get it. The issue that we're hearing the most from our players is encountering players from vastly different skill levels in their ranked games. Prior to Season 3, the worst 5% of Grandmaster levels would match and have players 7 divisions apart. That's the equivalent of Gold 3 to Silver 5. When we initially shipped 2.3, this leaped to 12 divisions apart or greater. We have made numerous changes since then, and we're making changes almost daily, and this has now been reduced to 9 divisions. We have additional changes planned for the mid-season patch that should improve this further. Okay, that's it. Talk to y'all soon, and I'll see you in game. Alright, so TDLDR, I would say the weakest part about Overwatch 2 right now is still the matchmaking, but hey, they're saying they're working on it, and we're gonna have to see if they pull through.